Welcome, everyone, to the 17th episode of Conversations with T. This is T herself, and today's guest is none other than Coach Key. If this is the first time you've come across my channel, know that Coach Key has been featured in my podcast quite a lot. She's a self-development coach who specializes in trauma for women of color. She also has her own podcast show called Keyona Speaks. I've had very interesting conversations with her in the past, and I'm really looking forward to having another one today. How have you been, Coach? It's great to have you here again.
Thank you so much for inviting me back to your podcast. I am really excited to have another candid, transparent conversation. And overall, I have been well, been working, been busy, but I can't complain. Alhamdulillah.
So today's episode is going to be a bit personal. The topic which I want to discuss with you is actually something that I feel very strongly about, and that's Muslims judging other Muslims. Um, I I think we should begin by sharing our experiences with interacting with other Muslims as well as what we've seen in social media. I think I'm just gonna start. So for those of you who don't know, I was born and raised in Dhaka, which is the capital city of Bangladesh. I grew up with many Muslims around me, but the vast majority of them weren't practicing and they were very ignorant about Islam. A lot of them, from what I've seen until now, they follow this cultural version of the religion. They engage in religious innovations as well as have beliefs that aren't backed up by the Quran and Sunnah. I I was judged and mistreated by certain Muslims in my community because I prayed 5 times a day. I ate halal. I didn't wear tight or revealing clothes. I didn't date, etc. Um, this kept going on until I became very secretive with my religion. Behind my family's back, I would talk to and befriend girls who practiced Islam to a certain extent. I'll come back to this point later on. I would also I would also watch Islamic videos and listen to recitations of the Quran without them finding out. Um, on the flip side, I came across certain practicing individuals in social media whose mannerisms and ways of thinking really put me off. They said things which really offended me, and I didn't like how they were super rude or judgmental towards people who weren't as practicing as they were. Saying stuff like, quote unquote, a non-hijabi shouldn't be married because she will raise her daughter to be a prostitute, or quote unquote any man whose wife doesn't wear the niqab is a youth. It's nonsensical, honestly. Nonsensical, honestly. After what I encountered, I started to feel more comfortable with talking to or befriending sinners. Now, when I say sinners, I'm talking about those Muslims who do care about their religion, but they practice very little and commit sins. I personally feel as though they're more understanding and they wouldn't make fun of you or pass unnecessary judgments for your shortcomings. What do you think? What do you have to say about this matter?
Well, listening to you talk, I started to think about examples of Muslims for me. I converted to Islam when I was in college in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
And during that journey of researching my own faith as a Christian, other world religions, and then finally coming to the discernment that Islam is for me, I realized that there weren't really any examples of Muslims in my childhood. I'm not, I won't doubt or discredit that I may have went to school with Muslims. In fact, one person comes to mind when I think about my childhood, but I can't remember if her mother wore a hijab. I know that she and her sister didn't wear a hijab in school. And so I really didn't have a basis of what does a Muslim look like. I remember as a child seeing women with their face covered in the malls from time to time. And
Mm-hmm.
I used that representation of, okay, I think I want to be Muslim because I am ready to take my faith, my relationship with God seriously. And when I think about Muslims, they outwardly show their devotion to God, unlike my Christian faith, where I felt like it was based on how I was raised. I want to speak for all Christians, but based in my household, it was just kind of like hit or miss, like not really spiritual, not really really pushing the tenets of Christianity, more so going to church for holidays and when we feel like we just haven't been there in a while. So when I did become Muslim, I had a very limited scope on who should I be as a Muslim or how should I be as a Muslim. And
Mm,
I think I had this pressure to conform and to wear this type of piety uniform that even when I struggled in my faith, I couldn't be honest and open about it. Number one, because I was highly surrounded by non-Muslims who made it very clear that I was the representative of Islam. So if I did anything wrong, they were already ready to tell me, oh, I know so-and-so that doesn't do that. Or if I wasn't doing something wrong, they were clearly they were confused themselves. And they were saying, well, you seem to be really serious about your religion because I know so-and-so who does do that. So it was always this confusion in my identity, so to speak, on how do I stand in my Islam? How do I comfortably grow in my journey of Islam without having to put on this term I later heard as performative righteousness or performative piety. And I feel like a lot of us as Muslims, whether we're born into the religion or not, have this sense of knowing how to code switch in our deen. We know how to be by ourselves. We know how to be with our non-Muslim friends or our friends that are Muslims, but maybe struggling in the deen. And we know how to be around people that we feel like are more religious than us. And we kind of know how to kind of code switch and chameleonize ourselves so that we kind of don't catch the slack. But like you said, with social media, I feel like that's an extra lens that's put on us because people are either trying to be transparent or not trying to be, they're just being their transparent self. And you have believers that don't understand the etiquette of giving advice
mm,
or don't understand the context of what they're seeing on social media. And they will be disrespectful in giving advice and will start judging. And that
exactly.
causes a social media divide. So like where I haven't had blatant discrimination between, myself and a fellow Muslim, I am very privy to it. And I've tried to protect myself from being judged by Muslims by trying to shield myself and so-called have this performative righteousness. It wasn't really until recently that I met a sister during Ramadan. She's been Muslim for about 2 years, and her honesty and her transparency with struggling with certain aspects of the deen, it allowed me to, one, learn compassion and learn where she's at in her faith and to support her any way I can or make dua for her. And number two, be honest with her about, hey, you may think that it's easy for me to do this, but I struggle too. And she has been a safety net for me because finally I feel like I got a friend where I could just be like, yeah, like I struggle with hijab this day. So yeah, that's been my experience in a nutshell.
Thank you for sharing that with me. I think like it's important for all of us to realize that everyone is different when it comes to how much they practice the religion. There are people who are very practicing, whereas there are a lot who don't even pray 5 times a day. Like it wouldn't really make sense to push the latter further away um, from Islam by acting all self-centered and rude. I mean, we live in a day and age where practicing Islam correctly is very difficult. With so much confusion and doubts around, we don't really need to we don't need to make things harder for Muslims who want to take their religion more seriously by having bad manners and projecting our ignorance onto them. What do you think?
I agree. I feel like many of us are walking around with a little bit of knowledge and we take that little bit of knowledge and we project it onto the next person, whereas we lack the intellect of the scholar. Like I feel like the great scholars that we share content, like their statements and things like that on social media, one thing that we lack that they have is they're able to look at a person and meet them where they are and then give them some type of fatawa or like give them some type of advice. Like for example, like what comes to mind when I think about our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, a companion was really struggling with wanting to fornicate. And he came to the Prophet and said, give me permission to fornicate. Now, the Prophet ﷺ could have been really abrasive with him, could have been really mean to him, could have been like, no, it's a sin, you're going to hell, or something like that. But he didn't do that. Instead, he thought about, who is this person that's talking to me? And how can I explain to him that it's not appropriate for a believer to perform fornication? Let me think about the women that he loves in his life. And let me ask him if he thinks it's appropriate for those women to engage in that. Would he like his mother, his sister, his aunt, his grandmother, his daughter to be fornicating with a strange man? And when he was able to put that perspective towards this young man, was he able to say, oh no, I would be fornicating with someone's, mother, sister, aunt, someone, and I don't want that for my own. So, okay, now I understand that it's not appropriate. Today, in today's time, we don't even give ourselves enough time to process what a person is going through or what we're witnessing to kind of empathize and give what's the word? Give excuses for a person to be able to even advise them in a non-judgmental way. And when I say judgmental, because we're naturally going to be judging people, but when you're able to kind of catch yourself judging and kind of like, okay, I feel like I'm judging this person. Let me bring it back down, and then reassess the situation. You're able to have a clearer mind in how you approach people, or whatnot. And so that's the thing I would say. Like, so many people have so much to say, but they really lack that component that our scholars have with really seeing people where they are in their struggles, really assessing the other factors that affects a person's deen, environment, their emotional health, their spiritual health, their physical health, their mental health. All these other factors play into how a person understands the religion, shows up in the religion, practices the religion. And we lay people, we count those things out and think that everyone's supposed to be snap at the finger, get it, when it's a journey. We are literally on a journey. Like my old imam used to say back in my home state, you start as a Muslim, and then if Allah puts it in your heart, you aspire to become a muhsin and then a mu'min. I hope I said it in the right order, but we're constantly on a journey. And like you said, we're in a time where it's hard. And the longer Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserves our life, the more that we will see that it will get harder and harder. Look at the environments that many of us live in, whether it's Muslim or not. We are constantly attacked for being the stranger that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us to be as Muslims submitting to Him. Who would think a headscarf would make you seem like an outcast? I'm minding my business covering my body, but people are, Muslim or not, are making me feel like I'm weird or I'm doing too much. So you have to fight to hold on to what little faith you have. And if you already come into this religion with perfectionism, that was one of my downfalls. I came in trying to be the perfect Muslim, and then you have people attacking you. It's like, dang, you kind of want to give up. Not to say I wanted to give up, but in this day and age with social media, people can want to give up on even trying to be a Muslim because they feel like they're never doing it right. This person says it this way. This person says it that way. And it takes having a supportive unit of people that's going to keep it real with you, that's going to see you and meet you where you are, that's going to, encourage you in a way that doesn't make you feel demeaned, and that's going to, give you proper examples so that you can see that one day, inshallah, you will get there. And then the number one thing is that will remind you that you can't be or do anything with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You need Allah to be the Muslim that you want to be. So start working on that relationship first instead of thinking about the relationships with the people, because the people will mislead you because the people are emotional and the people lack understanding at times.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I just wish that from what you mentioned previously, I just wish that like they could be aware of the fact that there's so much more to a person than what they see of them for the first time. We don't know that other person's story. We just see like I don't know, like 5% of what they show us, but the remaining 95% is hidden. Yeah, even though I mentioned this in one of my previous episodes once, I'll say it again. It's very easy for us to make negative assumptions or stories even about another person we meet for the very first time. We don't know their struggles. We don't know the hardships that they have to endure on a regular basis, and we have no idea about the traumas that they have experienced. And yeah, I just don't understand why some people are very quick to judge others quite unfairly and make them look like a criminal.
I don't understand either. I mean, yes, it's very clear in our religion, what's right, what's expected of us. But one thing I've been learning lately as a Muslim is that everything starts in the heart. And we have too many people who convert to the religion or who were born in the religion and they miss that component of the heart. The prophet, what'd you say?
I just said sincerity, right?
Yeah, it's sincerity because when you don the headscarf, when you choose to pray 5 times a day, when you choose to fast through Ramadan, when you just choose to rectify your behavior or to be the ideal Muslim, so to speak, instead of doing it because you know that you should or because people are bashing you for not doing it, naturally we should develop that desire to do it in the heart. Like think, for example, the Prophet ﷺ was, he was spreading the revelation for 23 years. And a
Mm,
large portion of those years were all about Tawheed, bringing the understanding that there is none worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, we can worship money, cars, our family, everything, but none of that is worthy of the worship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves. And
exactly.
understanding the resurrection and just really building that spiritual heart component. And once they were able to really hone that spiritual heart component and develop that sincerity and develop that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then were they able to go to Medina and stop drinking, stop fornicating, to stop marrying the certain women that they were, to stop burying their children, etc., etc. They had to build it in the heart because what the scholars would tell us is that the heart affects the limbs.
Mm,
Belief is in the heart, statements on the tongue, actions on the limbs. And
mhm.
so when we miss that heart component, we're doing what I said earlier. We're doing performative righteousness, performative piety. And one thing I've learned from my talking to my friend is that if it's not in her heart, she's struggling with it and she just needs extra support, extra time with Allah to massage her understanding, to work on her heart so that, like Moses said, Moses asked Allah to expand his chest, open his chest so that he can do what Allah asked him to do, which was go to Pharaoh with his brother Aaron. And so that's been really weighing on my heart as it relates to, with prayer and things like that, is checking my heart. The advice that I would give to all Muslims that are listening to this is, instead of judging, check your heart. And when you are judged, check your heart.
Mm,
And when you find disgruntlement, when you find hardness in the heart, whether it's because you really don't want to do an act of worship, or you feel like you're about to bash somebody for, being for showing up as a Muslim in a way that you think is unacceptable, go to Allah about it as far as fixing your heart. Because we are an ummah that's really like a family. The Prophet ﷺ described us as a body. And we have to learn how to be compassionate and hold space for each other. If not, this body will continue to be a cancer that is really dying across the global world. You know what I'm saying? And social media perpetuates that, like I said, because of lack of context, not knowing etiquette and advising people, not knowing people and approaching them in a way that you would your friend or your family member. And so just learning how to like bring that heart component into it, I think it would really, really help us individually and collectively as well.
mm. Yeah, that's so true. What I find very unfortunate is that some Muslims look down upon other Muslims for following a different opinion. This is something which I really don't like. A Muslim is made to feel bad for following an opinion which may not be the stricter one or something that's different from his or her family or friends' belief. Whether people want to acknowledge this or not, the reality is that valid differences of opinions do exist in Islam. Even the Sahaba and the four Imams, they differed when it came to certain fiqh issues. We're not allowed to force our opinion on another Muslim or make him or her feel bad for following something different.
I totally agree. There's this whole Hizbi culture. So when I first became Muslim, I knew of the three largest, not the three, I'm sorry, the two largest kind of like groups of Muslims, Sunni and Shia. I learned about that on my own and when I was in university, taking an intro to Islam class. And then
Mm-hmm,
I later became aware to other smaller groups like Ahmadiyya and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
mm-hmm,
But throughout my first, I would say, couple of years of being Muslim, I never had anyone approach me and say, what school of thought do you take? Or what scholars do you take from? Or, what type of Muslim are you? Until the later part of my life, the people started approaching me and saying, are you Salafi? And I always remember that a Muslim is upon the minhaj of the Salaf or Salihin. So I would say, well, I'm upon Quran and Sunnah. I'm upon the minhaj of the Salaf or Salihin. I strive to the best to hold up to the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ and following, his companions. But then I later kept hearing this word Salafi, Salafi, Salafi. And I realized that, wait a minute, we're kind of saying the same thing, but when these people are asking me if I'm Salafi, they're really talking about a group of people who have isolated themselves as saying we are upon the truth, and anyone who says that they're not is upon falsehood and is almost a misguided deviant innovator. And I moved from the south to the north of the United States, and so I live in a state that's not too far from another state that has a large population of people who identify themselves as Salafi.
Mm-hmm.
And when every time I hear about people who identify themselves as Salafi, and there's also a large community in the UK too.
Mm-hmm.
It's always abrasiveness. It's always judging people. So like the women will judge other sisters if they wear color. The Salafi women believe that they are to always wear niqab and always dress in black. So if any other sister, chooses to wear her face not covered or chooses to wear colorful hijab, they look down upon her. They're very nitpicky about what masajid people go to. So a person goes to a non-Salafi identified masajid, they'll look down upon them and say that they're going to a place of innovation or, misguidedness. And so like lately there's been a lot of discourse about, the Salafi community and their judgment of other Muslims for not saying, yeah, I'm Salafi, or, not attending certain masajid, or not taking from certain scholars, or not dressing in certain ways. So that has been something that's weighed heavy on my heart, because I'm like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yes, and the Quran tells us not to divide ourselves into groups. And then our Prophet, wasalam, also talks about us not dividing as well. And while maybe their intention is to, guide people to being upon the straight path, their way of doing it is really causing trauma to people in and outside their community, and it's causing division because they're so abrasive and quick to judge someone and tell someone that they're in our American slang term, they're off it. And I'm just like, wow, we already have all this stuff in our environment that's impacting us being Muslim, and then on top of that, you got somebody blatantly telling you you're not Muslim enough, or you ain't the right Muslim, and it's just like stress upon stress. And I really don't understand like where it came from, to be honest with you. I definitely came into Islam way before I became Muslim. I think it started in like the 80s or the 90s or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, these different groups and what their their propaganda and how they're enforcing Islam and judging people, like it's very, very dysfunctional, and it's very, very toxic, and it's very, very sad at the same time too.
One thing which I'm like, I have a big question mark about is the likes of SPUBS. Is that how you pronounce it? SPUBS or SPUBS?
Oh yeah, SPUBS. Yep. I know what you're talking about. That's what it's called. Yep.
Okay,
SPUB. No, they call it SPUBS, I think.
SPUBS. Okay. I have a huge question mark regarding the likes of Abu Khadija and etc. They seem like very knowledgeable people, but they should they should know better when it comes to debating or boycotting another Muslim. There are conditions and such rulings when it comes to these two matters, but those preachers, they refute in a manner as if it's nothing. Anyone who doesn't agree with their methodology automatically becomes an innovator, and this is not right. It's very toxic.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because one thing that I've been noticing has been so much focus on who do we take from, what have the right scholars said, and I feel like it's overshadowed the basics. I feel like we're at a time where we really just need to go back to the basics instead of
Exactly.
focusing so much on. Yes, we should focus on the covering, but we've gotten too nitty gritty with the minutia of the covering, and as far as like the scholars and stuff like that, like it's just we focus too much on the scholars and what they have said, and forgot that if they don't say Qala Rasulullah, Qala Allah, Allah said and His Messenger said, then really what are they saying? And I've just kind of noticed that, because I identify myself as a lay Muslim. I have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with a little bit of knowledge, but I have realized that when I'm amongst people who are constantly saying Sheikh so and so, Sheikh so and so, Sheikh so and so, it just overwhelms me, and all I want to know is like, okay, all I feel in my heart is, okay, go back to the basics. Learn the religion in a way that befits you, Keyona. Do not allow yourself to be overwhelmed by these people who keep bombarding you with what so and so said, because like you said, it's becoming a party of, well, not a party, it's becoming a season of constantly focusing on the people and less on Allah and his messenger. So I said, like, why are we spending our time bashing each other and refuting each other? Yes, like you said, it's totally fine to have disagreements and opinions and things like that. But when most of your time is spent on focusing on other people and refuting them and checking on what they're doing, then where do you stand with the basics of al-Islam?
Exactly.
Because there's many of us that are just normal lay Muslims, but then there's people that are scholars. And there's more lay Muslims than there are scholars. So when you think about knowing, okay, one day I'm going to return to Allah, are you really pleased with, oh, I judged so and so Muslim, or I spent my time arguing with so and so Muslim and refuting them? Or are you okay with, this is what I know that Allah said, this is what I know that the Prophet ﷺ said, and I'm trying to the best of my ability to live what they have told me to do. And if I die today, I try my best. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I mean by getting back to the basics.
Exactly. When people focus too much on others, they're actually missing out on the main objective, which is to worship Allah Ta'ala alone.
That's a fact. That's our purpose. Allah said that He did not create mankind and jinnkind except to worship Him. And people always think that it's just the ritualistic aspects of ibadah, but I'm realizing that everything we do in this dunya with the right intention is worshiping Allah, and that definitely is how you treat your fellow creation of Allah, whether they're believers or not, but especially your fellow brother in Islam. Like, it could all tie back to being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you can't have faith without character. I was actually listening to a class from a masjid in my area, and he was saying, like, either people have the Islamic knowledge and they lack the adab, they lack the etiquette or the character, or
Exactly.
they have the character and they have no Islamic knowledge. But we are striving to have a balance between the two, because
Exactly.
when you have knowledge, it gives you the character, and then that character helps you to implement that knowledge. And what I'm seeing in this day and age is really that spectrum. Either people are way on the left with the knowledge and they have no adab, no etiquette, no nothing, or they're way on the right and they have good character. You would think of them to be good people, but they lack knowledge, and because they lack knowledge, it's affecting how they are as a Muslim. And I never want to be one of those people that think I know so much that I'm actually discrediting my own self as a believer in the sight of Allah, because I'm using my little knowledge I have and I'm breaking somebody down, or I'm hurting someone's feelings because I'm like, oh, I'm right, you're wrong, you're supposed to do this, and I didn't even do it with love and compassion. I chose to beat them down and to judge them, not knowing that, first of all, I don't know what Allah has in His journey for that person. Some people's hardships and some people's sins, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses as a way to bring them closer to Him. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses it as a way to fix something that may be wrong in their life, to guide them in a different direction. We honestly don't know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing. All we can just do is just give that little bit of advice, and definitely wake up in the third of the night and pray for each other. That's all we can do. But when people are on social media and they're sliding in people's DMs and they're threatening them that they're going to go to hell and all this stuff, is like, whoa, 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 pump your brakes. You're doing too much. You're doing too much.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Coach Key. This was a very lovely discussion. It was also very personal because I don't really talk about my journey with a lot of people, and because I've been very private about my religion. Like I I still can't believe I'm actually having a discussion about this topic with someone else in such a public place. Yeah. So thank you for joining me today, and I hope the rest of your day goes well. Thank you and take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and know that you are not alone in your journey and that someone needed to hear your story. And don't be surprised if people slide into your DMs to, support you and get support from you. May Allah continue to bless your journey and everyone who's listening. And thanks for once again inviting me. Wa alaikum assalam.